The Strait of Hormuz has been sealed off, but the valves are still open. And the rules of the game are being rewritten, not just in those narrow waters of the strait, but beneath the sand, within the steel, and directly in the Cold War rooms of Riyadh. Dear viewers, welcome to the sharpest table of geopolitics, the MrGEOPOL channel. I'm Charlie. Please give your full attention to the screen. Today I'm not going to tell you about an ordinary conflict, but about the biggest checkmate in the Middle East. We'll discuss how Iran's "I'll close the Strait of Hormuz" blackmail turned into a massive iron colossus, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's MBS unique gamble on Iraq, and how Turkey has evolved into a pivotal hub in the energy axis. How did a kingdom that for years claimed it would remain neutral suddenly become Iran's worst nightmare? If you're ready, let's dive together into this immense war beneath the sands. Saudi Arabia has been walking a very dangerous tightrope for years. On one side, the Vision 2030 goals. On the other, the shadow of Iran's nuclear program. The Riyadh administration always said, "I'll stay in the gray zone and focus on my economy." That is, until the calendar read April 8, 2026. The final major Iranian missile attacks on April 8 lit a light bulb in Riyadh's strategic mind. The gray zone is no longer safe. The answer to the question posed in that unique Foreign Affairs article, "Can Saudi Arabia maintain its balance policy?" was given that night. No, it cannot. Riyadh realized that when Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz and fires its missiles, neutrality does not protect you. And Riyadh made the boldest move in its modern history. Instead of staying on the defensive, it launched a massive military buildup right at the heart of Iran's infamous Shiite crescent along the Iraqi border. This is no ordinary border security, friends. This is the message sent to Tehran. If you threaten my energy lines, I will directly choke your political and military influence in Iraq, right at the border. Saudi Arabia is no longer a target waiting for Iran's proxies. It has shifted into the role of a hunter breathing down their necks. Now let's discuss why Iran's infamous Strait of Hormuz blackmail has collapsed. Let's talk about that massive steel pipeline that put an end to the fairy tale, "We've closed the strait, the global economy will collapse." Saudi Arabia had foreseen this nightmare years ago. Before us stands one of the world's longest and most strategic energy arteries, the East-West crude oil pipeline, also known as Petroline. When Iran fills the Strait of Hormuz with mines and halts ships, Saudi oil doesn't have to pass through the strait. As detailed by the Energy Year, the Riyadh administration has increased the capacity of this massive pipeline to a full 7 million barrels. 7 million barrels! That's nearly the entirety of Saudi Arabia's daily exports. The oil is pumped directly from the east to the west of the country without entering the Strait of Hormuz and is safely shipped out to the world from the port of Yanbu on the Red Sea. The critical drone and missile attacks on April 9th were launched to halt this pipeline, but they failed. Iranian commanders are in shock. Closing the Strait of Hormuz, their most powerful weapon, cannot stop the flow of Saudi oil. The geopolitical death knell for Hormuz has been sounded by that pipeline operating at full capacity. So, is everything safe just because oil is flowing? Absolutely not. Iran is trying to achieve with its ground forces, those infamous proxies, what it couldn't accomplish with its navy. And Iraq is the target here. The Baghdad government is in a state of utter helplessness. Iraqi Prime Minister Soudani has effectively admitted to the world that he cannot control Iran-backed radical militia groups like Kataib Hezbollah within his country, and he has tried to brush off these attacks as individual initiatives. However, these excuses hold no weight for Riyadh. Right on the border of Saudi Arabia, there is an uncontrolled militia army firing missiles. As noted in that excellent Atlantic Council article, Iran-backed militias are destroying Iraq, and Baghdad must stand up to these groups. Otherwise, Iraq will be reduced to the status of a pariah state, outcast/rogue state, in Riyadh's eyes. The Riyadh administration is currently brandishing the economic embargo stick very harshly against Baghdad. Either you rein in those militias, or I'll seal the borders and cut off the economy. MBS's uncompromising stance has turned Iraq into a ticking time bomb caught between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So what do you think? Does the Baghdad government have the power to stop the armed groups within its own country? Or is the Iraqi administration merely a pawn caught between two giants? I look forward to your unique insights below. While we were discussing the border and the Strait of Hormuz, the real shock occurred in the open seas, thousands of kilometers away. We're breaking down that last-minute development that changed the rules of the game. If you think Donald Trump's global economic blockade doctrine applies only to the Strait of Hormuz, you're sorely mistaken. The blockade has now turned into an intercontinental hunt. According to that shocking report simultaneously released by the Institute for the Study of War, ISW, and the Wall Street Journal, on April 21st, U.S. forces conducted an operation against a massive tanker named Tiffany, right in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and seized the vessel. Do you know why this is so important? The Tiffany tanker was carrying a full 1.9 million barrels of Iranian oil. This operation sends the world a clear message. If you're transporting Iranian oil, you're not safe, not just in the Gulf, but even in the middle of the Indian Ocean, off the coast of Asia. We'll find that ship and seize its cargo with our Marines. Iran's hope of surviving by selling oil has been crushed, literally, under the boots of American soldiers who boarded the Tiffany's deck. Do you think the seizure of the Tiffany tanker in the middle of the Indian Ocean was just a slap in the face for Tehran? Let's look at the bigger picture, friends. With this operation, the real heavy blow was dealt to the Beijing administration, the world's #1 buyer of that oil, which has kept its massive industry afloat by acquiring that energy almost for free. Let's put that reality, known to everyone for years but never spoken aloud, on the table. China has been circumventing sanctions through ghost fleets to import energy at absurdly low prices. Those 1.9 million barrels of oil aboard the Tiffany were, in fact, the very cheap energy meant to keep China's massive factories running. Trump's de facto blockade doctrine in the Indian Ocean is a direct, open challenge to Xi Jinping. Washington is sending this message to Beijing. You cannot fund a state I've sanctioned. You cannot quietly smuggle that illicit oil through the open oceans patrolled by my navy. The Chinese government now finds itself in the middle of a massive, inescapable dilemma. Either it will deploy its navy to the Indian Ocean and risk a global confrontation with the United States to protect ships like the Tiffany, or it will quietly back down and give up its obsession with that very cheap oil. This is where Saudi Crown Prince MBS's unique strategic genius comes into play. The Riyadh administration is offering China a very clear alternative. Give up the risky oil. I'm increasing my production capacity to 10.2 million barrels per day. Let me guarantee your energy security, but from now on, you'll sit at the table by my rules and at the prices I set. The deafening silence Beijing has adopted in response to Operation Tiffany is, in fact, the greatest proof on the international stage that an era in diplomacy has come to an end. Great powers have no friends, esteemed viewers, only calculators. When interests run dry and American ships appear in the oceans, your allies will leave you alone in the dark waters of the Indian Ocean. Now let's take a look at that brand new world order emerging from all this chaos. Crises always create new opportunities, and one of the undisputed major strategic winners of this crisis is Turkey, in its role as a game changer. That report published by Middle East Eye, which shook the corridors of power, shows how the Middle East energy map is being redrawn from scratch. Before us lies a massive project called Pipe Dream. With the Strait of Hormuz blocked, Saudi Arabian oil and Qatar's massive liquefied natural gas, LNG, need a new route. And that one safe route, a massive energy corridor stretching from Iraq through Turkey and on to all of Europe. Do you know what will happen when this project comes to fruition? Iran's "I'll cut off Europe's energy" blackmail will be consigned to the trash bin forever. Turkey will become the sole, indispensable, and massive energy hub connecting the Middle East's energy to the West. The Ankara-Riyadh-Doha axis is pushing Iran completely out of the geopolitical equation. This is not just a trade route, it is also a steel shackle condemning Tehran to regional isolation. So, while Saudi Arabia is taking such radical steps, how is it protecting itself from Iranian missiles? This is where the United States' floating shields come into play. The real confidence behind Riyadh's massive gamble is the full support it receives from Washington. The Trump administration launched an unprecedented military buildup to protect Saudi oil facilities. The USS Abraham Lincoln and USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier strike groups, the world's most advanced war machines, were deployed directly off the coast of Saudi Arabia and near critical energy facilities. The US has explicitly offered Saudi Arabia a NATO-style protective umbrella. The guarantee was given: keep producing and keep the lines open. No Iranian missile coming from the sky or sea will reach your facilities. Riyadh's leadership is defying Iran's proxies and economy by leaning on this massive shield. Let's wrap it up, friends. Today, Saudi Arabia, with a production capacity of 10.2 million barrels per day, is positioning itself to become the sole absolute ruler of the global energy market as its rivals fall one by one. While Iranian oil is being seized in the Indian Ocean and the Tehran regime is drowning internally, Riyadh is cementing its image as the indestructible fortress to the entire world. However, this is precisely where Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's MBS biggest gamble lies. Riyadh's immense futuristic vision, the massive NEOM city, and the Vision 2030 projects. The fate of all these hinges on the outcome of this war at its doorstep. Let's conclude by asking that critical question. Do you think MBS's hawkish policy, seizing the opportunity presented by Iran's weakening to establish his kingdom as the sole ruler of the Middle East, will succeed? Or will playing with fire like this spell the end of those futuristic cities and dreams? Thank you for joining me on this journey, where we've analyzed events beyond mere propaganda, right at the strategic planning table. Please hit the like button to help spread these truths. Subscribe so we can continue decoding the secrets of the New World Order together. I'm Charlie. Keep your strategy sharp. See you in the next in-depth analysis. Stay safe.